Today, we're cutting through the noise on that viral claim about Blue Ivy crying in court and shouting for help. We'll separate what's real from what's pure clickbait and show you the truth behind the clips, the filings, and the rumors. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. 2 courts, 1 kid. I was sitting at my kitchen table when I first saw it pop up on my phone. The title was impossible to ignore. Beyonce's daughter cries in court and shouts for help. The thumbnail had Blue Ivy's face with tears edited under her eyes, a giant wooden gavel behind her, and a red circle drawn around her mouth like she was screaming. I didn't even click it yet. I just stared at it for a moment, thinking about how fast something like that can spread. The first thing that hit me was the word court. In my mind, court always meant the big echoing room you see on TV dramas. Wooden benches, a judge with a robe, people swearing on a Bible, a jury staring at you like they're reading your soul. The kind of place that would make anyone nervous, let alone a kid. But after a few years of seeing stories twisted online, I'd learned that court can mean a lot of different things. It can be a courtroom where people are on trial, sure, but it can also mean an office where a trademark dispute is being handled. It can mean court in the metaphorical sense, the court of public opinion, where strangers online decide if they love you, hate you, or feel sorry for you. That's when I remembered the first time I saw something like this happen. A couple years ago, I saw a headline about a famous singer breaking down in court, and I thought it meant she had been arrested. Turns out, she was sitting in a small conference room with lawyers, talking about a contract. No judge, no trial, just paperwork. But because in court sounded juicier, that's what people ran with. The same trick was being used here. So I clicked the video. It started with a still image of what looked like a PDF document. White background, black text, and the words United States Patent and Trademark Office in bold at the top. Underneath, you could barely make out the phrase Blue Ivy Carter. The video cut from that to a clip of Blue Ivy dancing on stage, her hair in motion, her face scrunched up like she might be tearing up. Then, without any explanation, the editor slowed the clip down, added a faint sound of someone saying help, and slapped big white text on the screen. Caught on camera. I leaned back in my chair and thought about how this was exactly the kind of ambiguity that keeps these stories alive. The PDF was from the Trademark Trial and Appeal Board, basically the part of the government that decides whether someone gets to officially own a name or a brand. It's not a criminal court. It's not even a civil trial. It's more like a formal argument over paperwork. Nobody wears robes, there's no jury, and the whole thing can happen over email or video call. But if you don't know that, seeing court at the top of a document feels serious. Then there's the stage clip. Out of context, it could look like she was in trouble. In context, it's just a normal moment during a concert when a performer reacts to the crowd, catches their breath, or makes a face that isn't perfectly neutral. The help in the background could have been a fan shouting, an echo from the audio system, or even something added in during editing. But because the title told me to expect a cry for help, my brain was ready to hear it. It's the same with those early thumbnails. I remembered seeing 3 different channels using almost the exact same style. A courtroom gavel, a crying child's face, and some kind of bold red arrow pointing at her. One even had Beyonce in the corner looking angry, but it was just a photo from a completely different event. They know what they're doing. The mix of legal symbols and emotional cues makes you feel like something serious and urgent happened, even before you know the details. That's when I started thinking about the 2 courts that Blue Ivy is caught in, whether she wants to be or not. The first is the paper court. That's the official stuff, the filings, the dockets, the government stamps. For her, it's mostly about her name and how it's used. There was a real case where Beyonce and Jay-Z's legal team went up against a wedding planner over the rights to Blue Ivy. The wedding planner had been using the name before Blue Ivy was born, and they argued that the celebrity version could cause confusion. This fight went through the Trademark Trial and Appeal Board, which sounds serious, but it's just a specialized panel for brand disputes. No jury, no jail time, just lawyers trading documents and arguments. The second court is the public one. That's the one you can't see on paper. It's made up of millions of strangers with access to a phone and an opinion. It's the TikTok pages that slow down clips until they look suspicious. It's the Instagram posts that cut off the part of a video where you'd understand what really happened. It's YouTube thumbnails that mix real photos with fake expressions until you can't tell what's genuine. And unlike the paper court, this one doesn't care about evidence. It just cares about how much attention it can get. I started scrolling through the comments on one of the videos. People were arguing about whether Blue Ivy really said help. Some swore they could hear it. Others said it was just a breath or a lyric. A few were pointing out that the clip was from months before any court filings had even happened. But the majority weren't interested in facts. They wanted to take sides. You could almost feel the tug of war, with one side trying to protect her and the other side convinced she was in some hidden trouble. It made me wonder how many people even knew about the trademark filings. I looked up the official record on the USPTO website, scrolling past line after line of procedural language. There were sections about likelihood of confusion, applicants' evidence, and opposers' arguments. If you didn't know better, it would all look like a foreign language. No wonder people would rather believe a video with a dramatic title than try to decode a government document. Still, the two courts overlap in dangerous ways. The paper court can feed the public court. A new filing or decision becomes a headline. The headline gets simplified into a few emotional words. Those words become a seed for speculation, and speculation turns into a viral story that has almost nothing to do with the truth. That's exactly what happened here. I could picture the path clearly. Someone saw a new trademark filing with Blue Ivy's name on it. They posted about it on Twitter or Instagram with a vague caption. Another person saw a concert clip where she looked emotional. They stitched it together with the trademark post. A third person edited in the fake help audio, and suddenly, without anyone deciding it outright, the internet had agreed on a completely false version of events, that she cried in a courtroom and shouted for help. It's almost too easy for this to happen, because court is one of those words that automatically feels heavy. If the headline had been, Beyonce's daughter gets emotional at concert, or Beyonce's daughter named in trademarked filing, nobody would have cared as much. But CRIES in court has all the drama of a TV episode. It promises scandal. It makes you want to know what happened. Even if you find out later that court was just a stack of papers in a lawyer's office, the first impression sticks. The thing is, Blue Ivy isn't the first celebrity kid to go through this. Plenty of famous children have had their names trademarked, their images controlled, their appearances dissected. Some of them grow up and laugh it off. Others talk later about how exhausting it was to have the whole world watching their every move. But right now, Blue Ivy's at the age where she's just starting to be on stage more, in films, in public events, without her parents right next to her. That means the public court is going to get louder. I sat back and thought about what it would be like to be her. To know that every smile, every blink, every deep breath could end up as part of a viral rumor. To know that there's a legal case somewhere with your name on it, even if it's just about a brand. To have people arguing online about whether you need saving when you might just be trying to remember a dance step. It's easy for me to close the tab and walk away. For her, there's no off switch. The public court never adjourns. It's open all day, every day, and the only evidence that matters is what gets the most clicks. I guess that's why this story hit me harder than most, because whether it's the paper court or the public one, she didn't choose to be in either, but here she is. One kid, two courts, and a whole internet ready to decide the verdict before the truth even has a chance to show up. Chapter 2. Paper Trails. When your name is a case file. When I first started digging into this, I thought it might be messy to explain, but the truth is the court part we're talking about here isn't messy at all. It's paperwork. Neatly typed lines, case numbers, stamps, signatures. It's the kind of stuff that sits quietly on a government website until somebody drags it into the spotlight. And in Blue Ivy's case, that spotlight turned a brand dispute into a story that sounded like a legal drama. The timeline goes back years. When Blue Ivy was born, her name instantly became known all over the world. That kind of recognition is valuable. Brands spend decades trying to make their names stick in people's minds, and here was a newborn whose name was already famous. But there was a catch. A wedding planner had been using the name Blue Ivy for her business long before the child was born. When Beyonce and Jay-Z moved to trademark Blue Ivy Carter for things like future merchandise, entertainment projects, and events, that wedding planner opposed, saying it would cause confusion with her own brand. That's where the Trademark Trial and Appeal Board, or TTAB, comes in. This isn't a place with wood-paneled walls and judges banging gavels. It's an administrative body under the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Their job is to decide if a trademark can be registered or not when someone challenges it. Cases like this are called oppositions. Both sides submit evidence. Examples of how the name is used, arguments about why it should or shouldn't be protected. Then the board reviews everything and issues a decision. From the start, it was clear this wasn't something Blue Ivy herself was handling. Minors don't testify in trademark disputes like this. The named party is Blue Ivy Carter, but the actual filings are made by her legal representatives, her parents' company, their lawyers. All the communication is between adults in suits, not between a kid and a judge. Still, you can see how people outside this process might misunderstand it. When the TTAB schedules a hearing, it sounds dramatic. In reality, a hearing here could be nothing more than attorneys speaking over a video call, presenting slides or written statements. No courtroom audience, no witness stand. But if a tabloid says, "Hearing set for Blue Ivy Carter," it's easy for someone to picture her sitting in a chair under bright lights. The reason families like this trademark their kids' names early is simple: control. If you lock down the trademark, you decide what products, shows, or projects can use the name. Without it, other people could cash in, selling t-shirts, perfumes, or even starting their own brands under that name. For someone like Blue Ivy, whose appearances are tied to massive tours, music credits, and even voice acting in movies, her name is essentially part of a business. That business needs protection before opportunists can get to it. I scrolled through some of the official documents on the USPTO site. You can see case numbers at the top, things like opposition, No. 9, 91,253,050. You can see the applicant listed as BGK Trademark Holdings LLC and the opposer as the wedding planner's company. Then there are lines about likelihood of confusion and priority of use. None of this reads like a thrilling story. It's slow, methodical, and formal. Pull the right phrase, opposition, hearing, decision, and you can make it sound like a celebrity courtroom showdown. That's exactly what some outlets did. I found articles that lifted single sentences from the TTAB decision and ran headlines like, "Beyonce's daughter wins in court battle." Technically true in the sense that the board ruled in favor of the trademark, but also misleading. There was no battle in the sense people imagined. No one was cross-examined, no jury deliberated. It was a matter of reading briefs, weighing evidence, and issuing a written opinion. And it was this same opinion. Then there are the rumor posts that play fast and loose with the facts. One popular claim was that Blue Ivy was called to attend a hearing. I dug into the docket and there's nothing like that. The attendance was attorneys. But the word hearing is just too tempting. It suggests someone speaking in their own defense. In the viral version, that someone became Blue Ivy herself. Once that seed is planted, it's hard to shake. People start to connect it with unrelated moments. They see her looking emotional at a concert and think, maybe it's connected to this so-called court battle. They hear a faint noise in a clip and think maybe that was her crying for help. In reality, these moments are from completely different contexts. But in gossip, context is the first thing to go. Looking at the filings, you also see why these cases can drag on. There are motions, requests for extensions, responses to those motions. Each one is another opportunity for a headline. Blue Ivy back in court, new filing in Blue Ivy case. Even if the filing is just a scheduling update, it gets spun into a fresh story. Other celebrity kids have gone through similar processes. Kim Kardashian and Kanye West moved to trademark Northwest for various categories. Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt did it for their children's names. In each case, the reasoning is the same: protect the name so it can't be exploited. None of these kids were giving testimony or attending hearings. But you wouldn't always know that from how the headlines read. What makes Blue Ivy's case different is the level of public interest. She's been in the spotlight since birth, photographed at award shows, appearing on stage with her mom, even winning a Grammy. That visibility makes her trademark case more tempting for clickbait. Combine that with the emotional weight of the word court, and you have a story that people want to believe is more dramatic than it is. By the time the TTAB ruled in Beyonce's favor, the online story had already evolved into something else entirely. The real decision was just a few pages long, explaining why Blue Ivy Carter was unlikely to cause confusion with the wedding planner's brand. But the viral version was a triumphant courtroom win after an intense legal fight. And somewhere along the way, people started inserting a crying child into the scene, even though that never happened. It's strange, watching how a neat stack of legal papers can turn into a messy, emotional rumor. In the paper court, it's all about precision, dates, names, definitions. In the public court, it's about whatever image sticks in your mind. And when you put those two together, the truth gets bent until it barely looks like itself anymore. That's why I think of this as the paper trail chapter. Because on paper, everything is straightforward. It's only when those papers leave the file and hit the internet that they start to tell a different story. One that has more drama, more emotion, and a lot less accuracy. Chapter 3, Origin of a Headline, Rumor Archaeology. I wanted to know exactly where this Beyonce's daughter cries in court and shouts for help thing began. Not just the videos that were trending right now, but the very first time that exact mix of words and images appeared. It felt like digging for bones. You don't just trip over the truth, you have to go layer by layer, finding where it all started and how it grew into the giant story it became. So I started with a search back. I typed the whole phrase into YouTube's search bar and filtered by oldest. The earliest video with that exact title was posted about a year and a half ago. It had barely cracked a few thousand views at the time, but the thumbnail was already the blueprint. Blue Ivy's face cut out and placed against a generic dark courtroom background. Over her cheeks, someone had added glowing blue teardrops that didn't even match the lighting in the photo. In the corner, a giant wooden gavel hovered in mid-air, frozen in the act of coming down, and just to push the drama further, there was a faint, grainy hallway image layered in like it was a paparazzi shot from outside a judge's chambers. From there, I watched how the style evolved. The second wave of videos used more aggressive designs, thick red arrows pointing at her mouth, magnifying glass icons zooming in on her eyes, and bolder text with words like breaking and leaked in all caps. Some of these videos borrowed footage from unrelated courtroom news stories, like celebrity trials or political hearings, and spliced that in between clips of Blue Ivy performing on stage. The cut would happen so quickly that your brain didn't have time to question whether she was actually there. One of the most common tricks was adding courtroom brie-brow, things like a judge walking into a chamber, a close-up of hands shuffling legal papers, or even slow pans of an empty jury box. None of that had anything to do with her trademarked case or her life, but it gave the viewer's mind a place to connect the dots, even if those dots didn't belong to the same picture. By the time you saw a clip of her on stage, Your brain had already been primed to think courtroom, even though she was clearly under stage lights, not fluorescent ceiling panels. Then there was the lip read trap. One channel slowed down a concert clip where Blue Ivy was between choreography steps. Her mouth moved in a way that, if you squinted and believed the caption on the screen, could look like she was saying, "Help." The moment you read the word "help" in big white letters, your brain filled in the sound. You could watch it muted and still think you heard it. Effectively, this is one of the oldest tricks in the clickbait playbook. Give the viewer a label first, and their perception bends to match it. And the thing is, once one video lands, the rest follow fast. These channels operate like dominoes. Someone posts the first video, it picks up a few thousand views, and suddenly half a dozen other accounts repost the same footage with slightly different titles. Instead of "Cries in Court," maybe it's "Cries in Court and Calls Out." Instead of "Shouts for Help," maybe it's "Pleads for Help." All the same clips, just reshuffled. Most of the time this happens within 48 hours of the original upload, because that's when the search traffic is hottest. Of course, the titles alone weren't enough for some people. A new layer of rumor got added, claims of secret court audio. This was supposed to be a leaked recording from inside a hearing where Blue Ivy was allegedly present. The problem? These audio files were usually stock courtroom ambience, muffled chatter, a cough in the background, the scrape of a chair, that anyone could download from free sound effect websites. No specific voices, no identifiable details, nothing that could be traced to her. But because they were labeled sealed testimony or restricted audio, it made them feel forbidden, like you were getting something you weren't supposed to hear. Another common fake was the gag order claim. That's when someone says the court has forbidden anyone from talking about the case, and that's why mainstream media isn't covering it. It's a convenient way to explain the total lack of evidence. If no one's allowed to talk, then the absence of proof becomes part of the proof. Real gag orders do exist, but in cases involving minors, the protections are usually straightforward and documented. There's no mystery, just confidentiality for the sake of privacy. By the time I had collected all these examples, I could see the mutation path clearly. The first uploads simply said "Cries in Court." Then the "Shouts for Help" part got tacked on. After that came "Judge Calls Recess" in a few thumbnails, implying there was some dramatic disruption in the middle of a proceeding. None of that was backed up by filings or credible witnesses. It was all built from stacking half-truths and unrelated clips until it felt like a coherent story. Checked the view counts and noticed something else. The oldest video had modest numbers for months, then spiked hard about 6 months later when another, bigger channel used the same footage. The comments told the rest of the story. Early ones were confused, asking for sources, while later ones were more certain, saying things like, "I heard this on TikTok too," or "This is all over Instagram." The repetition across platforms had turned doubt into belief. It made me think about how easy it is for a headline to leap from one corner of the internet to another. One person's YouTube video becomes someone else's TikTok clip, then turns into a screenshot on Twitter, then becomes a Facebook post with a completely different caption. By the time it circles back to you, it's wearing a new face and a new voice, but it's the same rumor underneath. I wish I could say this only happens with celebrity gossip, but it's everywhere. Politics, sports, local news. The same techniques apply: recycled footage, suggestive captions, audio tricks, and a constant resharing that gives everything a false sense of confirmation. At the end of the day, tracing this one headline was like following a trail of breadcrumbs in a storm. You can see the first few clearly, but then the wind scatters them, and people start dropping their own crumbs in different directions. Before long, no one remembers where the trail actually began. They just know they've heard the story enough times to think it's true. And that's how Beyonce's daughter cries in court and shouts for help went from one obscure video with fake tears and a gavel to an internet web rumor that people now repeat, like it was an event they personally witnessed. Chapter 4. Microphone check. The clips people point to. If there's one thing that keeps this rumor alive, it's the clips. The same 3 or 4 moments looped endlessly across TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. People point to them like they are the smoking gun, proof that something happened. But when you take a step back and watch them in full, the story changes completely. The first set of clips comes from the Renaissance tour. Blue Ivy made multiple cameos during Beyonce's performances, stepping out with the dancers for specific numbers. The first time she did it, the reaction was mixed. Some praised her confidence for getting on stage in front of tens of thousands, but others criticized her moves as stiff, her expressions as too serious. Those comments didn't stay in a small corner of the internet. They made headlines. Outlets quoted tweets, pulled screenshots, and asked whether she was ready for the spotlight. But here's what people forget. She came back. Not just once, but again and again. And every time her performance improved. The choreography got sharper, her timing more confident, and her stage presence brighter. By the end of that run, the ovations were deafening. Fans went from nitpicking to cheering for her growth. That arc, criticism to ovations, should have been the headline. Instead, certain channels zoomed in on 1 or 2 moments in the middle when she still looked nervous and cut them to fit the crying in court narrative. One of those moments is the so-called help clip. In the rumor version, it's a slowed-down shot of her between dance steps, her lips forming a shape that someone decided looked like the word help. Over it, there's faint audio, hard to tell if it's real or edited, of someone saying the word. It's enough to make you lean in, to wonder. But the full video tells a different story. In the original concert footage, that moment is part of a transition where she looks to the side at the other dancers. You can see her mouth moving as she cues them, the way performers often do during live shows. The sound that's supposedly her voice is buried under the roar of the crowd, and when you listen closely, it doesn't match her mouth movements at all. It's likely either a fan shouting from the front row or a random syllable caught by a microphone, but if the caption tells you she's saying help, your brain will hear it. Then there's the context no one in the rumor videos talks about: in-ears and stage cues. Performers often wear in-ear monitors that feed them music, counts, or instructions from stage directors. If a dancer's timing is off or a transition is coming up, they might look toward another performer, nod, or say a quick word. To someone unfamiliar with stage work, that might look like distress. To the people on stage, it's just part of the job. Tina Knowles, Beyonce's mother, has even spoken about this publicly. In interviews and social posts, she's mentioned how proud she is of Blue Ivy for handling the pressure. She's acknowledged that the criticism at first was tough, but said her granddaughter used it as motivation to work harder. One post described how Blue came off stage beaming after her performance because the crowd had cheered louder than ever before. That's a far cry from the rumor's image of her breaking down and calling for help. The film coverage of the Renaissance tour shows the same thing. Blue Ivy's moments on stage are framed as a story of growth. She starts off tentative, gets feedback, and improves. In one scene, Beyonce talks about letting her daughter find her own way in the spotlight, guiding her without forcing her. The editing and narration treat it as an empowering moment, not a legal drama or some kind of rescue scenario. But the rumor clips strip all that away. They take a 3-second shot from a high-energy, supportive environment and present it like evidence from a court proceeding. Some even add a date stamp to make it look like it coincides with a filing in her trademarked case, when in reality the concert happened weeks or months earlier. That's where receipts matter. When you check the actual dates, the supposed court breakdown moments don't line up with any legal event. They line up with scheduled tour stops. Another trick is the crop. On TikTok, the help clip is almost always cropped tight on her face. You don't see the other dancers moving in sync. You don't see the audience in the background waving signs and cheering. You don't see her looking toward the stage director. In the full version, all those things are obvious, and they tell you she's not isolated. She's in the middle of a performance, surrounded by professionals who are exactly where they're supposed to be. If you put the cropped version and the full version side by side, the difference is jarring. In the cropped one, it's easy to project whatever you've been told to see. In the full one, it's clear she's performing. Even the audio changes when you play them next to each other. The waveform of the crowd noise shows there's no clear spike at the supposed help moment. It's just constant cheering. That's why this rumor works so well for people trying to get clicks. It's built on micro moments, seconds of footage that without context can be made to look like anything. And because most viewers won't go hunting for the full version, the cropped clip becomes the truth they remember. What's left out of these rumor videos is the obvious. These moments don't show distress. They show a young performer learning her craft in real time. The hesitation you see is the same hesitation anyone has when they're new to a stage. The words you think you hear are either nothing at all or just part of the coordination between dancers. And the court connection? Pure invention. The sad part is, even when the truth is easy to verify, the myth tends to stick around. Someone sees the rumor clip first, and maybe the full version later, but the emotional punch of the rumor lingers. It's more exciting to think you've witnessed something dramatic than to learn it was just a stage cue. That's why, if you're going to understand this story, you have to watch the full performance, hear the full audio, and place it in the real timeline. When you do that, the idea that she cried in court and shouted for help falls apart completely. What's left is a story about a young girl stepping into the spotlight, taking criticism, and turning it into applause. Something that deserves a headline of its own. Chapter 5. Background noise, adult headlines swirling nearby. Sometimes the noise around a person can be louder than anything they've actually done. With Blue Ivy, a lot of the court talk people see online isn't even about her, it's about her parents. And yet, because of the way search results and social feeds work, her name gets pulled into those headlines over and over until the lines blur. I've noticed it happens in waves. There's a new film premiere or an awards show where the whole family steps out together, smiling for cameras. At almost the same time, there's a separate news story about a lawsuit naming Jay-Z, or a business matter involving Beyonce. Those stories might be completely unrelated to the event she's attending, but when the photos and the headlines land in the same news cycle, they stick together in people's minds. That's how you get the messy, stitched-together version of events that floats around online. Something like, Event A is the movie premiere, Filing B is a court case involving an adult in the family, Clip C is a concert moment that looks emotional. Put them together without any context and suddenly you've got fake D. Blue Ivy breaks down after court appearance. In reality, she wasn't in court. The emotional clip was from a performance weeks earlier, and the only reason her name shows up in search results next to the legal filing is because algorithms group anything about the family under the most clickable headline. Seen how quickly this blending happens. On one gossip channel, they showed footage of the family walking a red carpet. Everyone's dressed up, posing for photographers, talking to reporters, but across the bottom of the screen was a news ticker pulled from a completely different broadcast, one about a civil suit naming Jay-Z. The suit wasn't mentioned in the red carpet footage at all, but the way it was edited made it look like they were walking into a courthouse. If you only half watched, you'd never question it. This is where the court of public opinion really does its damage. Timelines collapse, context disappears, and a child who isn't even legally connected to the case becomes part of the visual story just by being in the same family. Once that association takes hold, every new appearance is viewed through that lens, even if it's a birthday party or a school event. One of the more frustrating rumor patterns is the idea that a minor has been summoned to appear in court. It's the kind of phrase that sounds urgent, but in reality, courts go out of their way to shield minors from that kind of exposure, especially in cases that aren't directly about them. You can check party lists in filings to see who's actually involved, and Blue Ivy's name has never appeared as a party to any of these adult legal matters. But rumor videos rarely link to those records, because the absence of her name would break the narrative. When you line up the receipts, the truth is obvious. A headline about a lawsuit sits next to a date-stamped photo of a public family outing. The attendance list for the legal matter shows only adult names. The credit roll for the film premiere lists Blue Ivy as part of the cast or crew for a performance piece, not as a witness in any kind of case. But because the visuals can be made to overlap, the difference between attending a premiere and attending court gets erased in the public imagination. It's the same technique you see in other show business families. I've watched how certain news outlets cover actors' kids or athletes' kids. Some publications have clear policies. Minors are off limits unless their appearance is directly related to the story and parents have approved it. Others ignore those lines completely, pulling children into narratives for the sake of a headline. The difference is glaring when you put those side by side. And this is where the ethical guidelines come in. Major news organizations, at least the responsible ones, have rules about protecting minors from unnecessary media attention, especially in connection to legal issues. Those rules exist because kids can't choose how they're represented. They can't issue statements or correct the record in the same way adults can. And even if the coverage is technically legal, it can still cause long-term harm by tying their names to things they had nothing to do with. With Blue Ivy, the background noise is constant. Its premieres, award shows, charity events, all completely normal for someone in her position, mixed with legal filings, lawsuits, and business disputes that belong to the adults in her life. The problem isn't that both kinds of stories exist. The problem is that online, they don't stay separate. The algorithms, the thumbnails, and the gossip channels mash them together until people can't tell one from the other. And that's how we get here, talking about a child crying in court when the truth is she's never been part of those proceedings at all. The real events are more ordinary and far less dramatic, but in the court of public opinion, ordinary doesn't get clicks, and drama always wins. Chapter 6. Why People Heard Help. Psychology of Viral Misreadings. I've always believed that once someone tells you what you're supposed to hear, you can't unhear it. That's exactly what's happening with the help moment in this rumor. It's not magic, and it's not proof, it's just how our brains work. There's even a name for it when it comes to visuals. Pareidolia, the way we see shapes or faces where they aren't. With audio, it's similar. Once a caption flashes the word help on the screen, your mind starts looking for those sounds in the noise, and it will find them, whether they're actually there or not. This is why so many people swear they hear the word in that stage clip of Blue Ivy. The background noise at a concert is a mess of frequencies. Bass vibrations from the music, the rhythmic chanting of the crowd, individual voices screaming at random. When you isolate a fraction of a second and slow it down, some of those noises can resemble speech. If you've already been told what to listen for, your brain matches the closest sound it can find. The same phenomenon is behind misheard song lyrics, the kind where everyone confidently sings the wrong words for years because they fit the rhythm and pattern they expect. Crowd acoustics make this even messier. The way sound bounces around in a large venue can stretch and smear certain syllables. A high-pitched shriek from one corner might echo across the arena and mix with another sound halfway through its path. What you get is a jumble that, if frozen in just the right moment, could sound like a distinct word. On video, it's even trickier. Microphones on cameras often pick up odd artifacts the human ear wouldn't isolate in person. That's why the so-called help can vanish or change completely, depending on which recording you're listening to. Then there's thumbnail priming. Before most people even hear the clip, they've already seen a picture of Blue Ivy's face, cropped close, maybe with fake tears drawn on, maybe with the word help in bold letters just below her chin. Your brain has already decided what the story is before the first frame plays. By the time you hear the faint, garbled sound in the background, you're ready to confirm that it's what you were promised. This is reinforced by something called the Zeigarnik effect, our tendency to focus on incomplete stories. A headline like, "She cried out for help, but why?" plants an unfinished question in your mind. You stay watching, searching for the moment when the missing piece will appear. When it doesn't appear clearly, you accept the closest thing you find. There's another layer to this too, the protective reflex people have toward children. If you think you're hearing a child in distress, you're far more likely to believe it and act on it. Bad actors online know this, and they use it to make their content spread faster. A video suggesting a child said help gets more shares, more comments, and more emotional engagement than one showing a neutral stage moment. This isn't just about curiosity. It taps into a deep human instinct to protect the young, which makes people less likely to question the evidence. The leaked courthouse audio rumors are a perfect example of how that instinct gets exploited. Some of these clips are just generic courtroom background sounds, papers rustling, a cough, distant murmurs that anyone can download from free sound libraries. They're passed off as being from a secret hearing, and because they sound official, people don't think to compare them to real court audio. If you do, the difference is obvious. Real courtroom recordings, when they're public, are clear, structured, and you can usually identify who's speaking. The supposed leaks tied to Blue Ivy's name are muddy, anonymous, and never backed by any verifiable source. I've read articles and explainers from journalists and academics about how easy it is to manipulate both audio and perception. One common theme is that context is everything. If you hear an ambiguous sound in a blank room, you'll shrug it off. If you hear the same sound after someone tells you it's a cry for help, your brain treats it as urgent. Platforms themselves often acknowledge this in their community guidelines, warning against edited or manipulated media that could mislead people, especially in sensitive situations. But enforcement is inconsistent, and viral posts can spread thousands of times before they're even flagged. If I were to put the cheering crowd audio from that concert on a screen and show you its waveform, you'd see thick, jagged walls of sound that swallow up individual words. The help moment wouldn't stand out as a spike. It would be buried under constant noise from every direction. Highlighting the exact frequencies might even show they don't line up with human speech at all. But most viewers never get that kind of breakdown. They get a cropped video, a slowed-down soundbite, and a caption telling them what they're about to hear. This isn't unique to this rumor. The same thing happened with a famous misheard song lyric years ago, where half the internet swore a singer was saying one phrase, and the other half heard something totally different. In reality, the actual lyric was something else entirely, but because each side had been primed, they kept hearing their version, even after being shown the real one. That's the exact same psychology at work here. So when people insist they know, Blue Ivy said, help, it's not that they're lying. It's that their brains have been set up to interpret what they hear in the most dramatic way possible. It's a mix of crowd noise, chaos, visual suggestion, emotional priming, and the instinct to protect. And once that version takes root, it's incredibly hard to replace it with the truth. Chapter 7. The line we won't cross. I have to say this as plainly as possible. There is no credible evidence that Blue Ivy has ever had a breakdown in a courtroom. None. Not in the trademark case, not in any other legal setting. That image, the crying child in front of a judge calling for help, is a fabrication stitched together from unrelated events, cropped video, and rumor repetition. If you've been following along, you already know how each part of that image was built and why it doesn't match reality. But that doesn't mean there's no story here. There is, just not the one the clickbait wants to tell. The real stakes aren't about a courtroom at all. They're about a kid growing up in a family where her name is a brand before she even finishes middle school. They're about navigating live performances in front of massive audiences while the adults in your life are dealing with high-stakes business deals, intellectual property disputes, and constant public attention. And they're about the way strangers, millions of them, feel entitled to judge, criticize, or speculate about you when you've barely had time to figure out who you are. When I think about the costs of that, I don't think about imaginary court scenes. I think about the endless stream of online comments that pick apart every frame of a performance. She looked tired. Her outfit was wrong. She's only there because of her parents. That's the Napo baby discourse. People using your family connections as both a reason to dismiss your work and an excuse to scrutinize you harder. For an adult, that can be exhausting. For someone who's 11, 12, or 13, it can be overwhelming. There's also the physical side of this kind of scrutiny. Performance is hard work. You have to manage your breathing, your movement, your timing, and your facial expressions, all while hearing yourself through in-ear monitors and reacting to the crowd. When a mistake happens, and they always do, it gets replayed over and over online. Coaches can help you recover technically, but resilience in the face of mass criticism is something you have to build on your own. It takes time and support, and it's not something that should be treated like a public sport. The ugliest claims tied to this rumor are the ones I won't repeat here in detail. They're designed to shock, not inform, and they have no credible sources. They throw in words like abuse and cover-up with nothing to back them up, knowing those terms will travel faster than any correction. I'm not giving them the oxygen they're looking for. What I will say is that if you see a claim that sounds extreme but offers no evidence, no link to a primary source, and no way to verify it, treat it as false until proven otherwise. That's not being defensive, it's being responsible. Even the platforms that host these videos acknowledge that minors need special protection. Most of them have some form of policy saying they don't allow content that puts children in dangerous situations, sexualizes them, or encourages harassment. The problem is, enforcement is spotty and gossip can skirt the edges of those rules by claiming it's just commentary or just speculation. That's why it's up to creators to draw their own lines. I've read statements from child privacy advocates who put it bluntly, when you spread an unverified story about a minor, you're not just risking being wrong. You're adding to a permanent record that person can't erase. For kids in the public eye, the internet's memory is even longer than usual. Even if they prove a rumor false, the headline will still show up in searches years later, right next to their real accomplishments. That's why, for this channel, we replace the courtroom gavel image with a microphone check. 1, 2, can you hear the truth? It's not about pretending the pressure doesn't exist. It's about framing the pressure honestly, as performance nerves, as public branding battles, as the challenges of growing up visible. That's dramatic enough without inventing legal trauma. So here's the address I want to give directly to anyone watching or listening. If you care about these young performers, the best thing you can do is engage with them in a way that keeps their humanity intact. Share the moments that make you proud of them. Defend them against baseless attacks. And when you see a rumor that crosses the line into exploiting their image for clicks, let it die in your feed instead of passing it along. Blue Ivy's story is still being written, and like any kid's story, it's going to have highs, lows, awkward moments, and triumphs. We don't have to erase the reality that she's under more pressure than most of us will ever know, but we do have to be careful about what we project onto her, especially when it's something she's never actually lived. The line we won't cross is the one that turns her into the lead character in a scene that never happened. The one that turns you into the lead character in a scene that never happened. That's where truth ends and exploitation begins, and it's not a place this story needs to go. Chapter 8. Verdict of the crowd. What we know, what we don't, what we choose. When I look back at everything we've gone through in this story, it really comes down to two courts. The first one is the paper court, the official side. That's the trademark filings, the legal decisions, the dates and case numbers that you can actually look up. It's calm, procedural, and it runs on rules. Then there's the other court, the public one. That's the arena of search results, edited clips, thumbnails, and rumors. It's unpredictable, emotional, and it runs on whatever gets the most attention. From the paper court, here's what's verified. Blue Ivy's name has been the subject of trademark proceedings. Her family's legal team filed and defended those marks, and those cases were decided in their favor. She has performed publicly, including on the Renaissance Tour, in front of massive audiences. She's appeared with her family at premieres and events, including the Mufasa The Lion King premiere. Every one of those things is documented. In the public court, here's what's not verified, no matter how many times it's repeated. There's no credible evidence that she has ever cried in a courtroom. There's no proof of her shouting for help in a legal setting. The clips used to suggest that happened are from concerts, not courtrooms. The supposed leaked audio is either generic background sound or fan noise from performances, not anything tied to an actual hearing. So where does that leave us? For me, the verdict is simple: empathy over engagement bait. I'm not saying we can't talk about how much pressure there is on kids in the public eye. We can and we should, but we don't need to fabricate dramatic scenes to make the conversation worth having. The real story, that of a young performer finding her footing under the weight of global attention, is dramatic enough on its own. If you're watching this, I'd like you to do two things in the comments. First, drop a timestamp of your favorite supportive crowd moment for Blue Ivy. Those moments when the audience's energy lifts her up instead of picking her apart. Second, tell me how you think creators like me should handle stories about minors in the spotlight. What's the balance between covering public events and respecting privacy? And if there are other rumors you've seen about this family, or about any public figure that you want checked, share those too. I promise, if I cover them, I'll bring you only what I can verify. No invented scenes, no manipulated drama. Behind the scenes of this episode, I checked a long list of sources. Official trademark documents from the United States Patent and Trademark Office, concert footage from multiple angles, interviews with Tina Knowles, publicly released film clips, and platform policy guidelines on minors. That's not the whole list, but it's enough to show you that this wasn't guesswork. Every claim I've kept in this story had something concrete behind it. So here's where we end. A wall of positive comments on screen, people celebrating her growth and talent, not repeating the rumor. Then, a blank slate, no flashing headlines, no gavel sound, just the words, "Mic check over." Next time, I might take you into a topic that's connected but less explosive. How celebrity trademarks for minors actually work. How they're licensed, how they're renewed, how they're enforced. It's not as dramatic, but it's the kind of story that's rich in detail and full of surprises when you really look at it. For now, the verdict is in. 2 courts, 1 kid, and a choice to see her as a headline or as a person. I know which one I'm choosing.